Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your giant robot-riding hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC, and when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we got you covered. It's the end of another year here on Earth and our little anime podcast as well. So what better way to say goodbye to 2018 than to climb into the cockpits of our big mechs, the robot kind, not the burger, and fly right out of it into 2019. And we'll do just that by reviewing two pretty robot-focused shows on this episode. First, John will talk about the Toys to Life version of the Gundam franchise, kinda, with Gundam Build Divers. And then I will talk about the quirky cast of Planet With and the interstellar war they are entangled with. Two pretty action-packed shows to get you into the perfect mood for the equally action-packed and anime explosion-heavy holidays. So don't go anywhere, we'll be right back.
Yeah, so this time around, get to jump back into the cockpit of everyone's favorite type of big old robot, a Gundam. Except not quite, because the Gundam Build franchise anime series has been about, the building of the models, the gunpla, as they're referred to, plastic Gundams.
Which is a giant industry in Japan in its own right.
Oh, most definitely. Models of all kinds. I mean... I think Bandai has that game on lockdown because of, how many models there are. I'm just sitting here staring at a stack of about 10 or 11 Gundams and the Siegfried from Macross Delta sitting there unbuilt. Oops. Mm-hmm. So it is no secret. It has become a worldwide phenomenon. Obviously, since model building has been a thing for centuries, started with probably ships and bottles, probably some of the earliest kinds, up to these, plastic models that people put together. I'm the kind of person who just puts it together per the instruction, tries to clean it up and make it look nice. And then there are those people out there who try to do the whole kit bashing, garage kit type thing and make their own sort of unique creation, which is basically the crux of the Gundam Build franchise. Just, what unique spin can you put on these pre-established robots? And I haven't really had a chance on the podcast, at least, to talk at length about it. So, the Gundam Build series started off as, I believe it was just called like Gundam Builders. It was like this one-off thing that I didn't really watch a whole lot of, but then after that came Gundam Build Fighters, where you build the models, and thanks to the magic of Plavsky particles, not Minovsky particles.
All right.
These Plavsky particles allowed the models to come to life and to fight each other in like this virtual battlefield type thing. Like, they go into these different sized fields that have different set pieces in them. Like, it might be in space, it might be underwater, it might be, in a jungle, that sort of thing. And, that sort of set the precedent. A mutual friend of ours was like, hey, there's going to be this show about, building Gundam models. And I'm like, man, I don't care about that. It's just going to be them peddling the toys. And then it secretly turned out to be the hypest shit. And it's been a downhill spiral ever since for me. But Gundam Build Fighters was great. It was a lot of fun. It had a great cast. And, of course, amazing animation and great battles throughout. And the big conclusion was that, the system is sort of starting to bleed into the real world. And that sort of, made things really cool when, a giant replica of a Bawa Ku just appears out of thin air, and they have to put a stop to the system before it goes haywire. So that was neat.
Okay.
Yeah. Build Fighters Try kind of dialed it back a little bit, but it still had some pretty hype moments throughout. The didn't go quite as crazy with the conclusion, as far as I recall. I don't know. I remember the original series a lot better, probably because I'm biased toward it, and it's kind of my favorite of the lot. But Build Fighters Try had a lot of good stuff in it as well, and they went from going, and they changed the dynamic, being like these one-on-one fights to being like these team battles, because apparently that's the thing you do in Japanese media. Man, this single player thing worked great. Remember the 3D Sonic games and how the immediate follow-up was Sonic Heroes? Which I'm not trying to draw a comparison in the terms of quality, but it seems like a strange sort of progression that's happened in more than one franchise. I don't know.
I mean, just in terms of, things you can do with a battle-focused kind of fighting game, tournament-ish story setup. I mean, tag battles are a thing that makes sense just in terms of that world setup. So why not go there, right? I mean, it's weird that it's that common, but I guess it's just, get 2 for the price of 1 or something like that. So
2 or 3 or
yeah.
Kind of like how Dissidia went from being a 1-on-1 game to a 3-on-3 game.
Yeah, which I am not a fan of, but
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a podcast for opinions about video games, but Dissidia NT is a thing. But I think that kind of gets us to where Gundam Build Divers is. It's just sort of that brief overview. Mm-hmm. So we go from the actual models fighting in a real space to everyone's favorite VR MMOs.
Yay.
So
my enthusiasm is through the roof.
So basically in the near future, where the Gundam franchise is at its peak and the popularity of Gunpla is soaring to new heights, a new VR MMO game called Gunpla Battle Nexus Online, which we refer to as GBN for short. Thank you for an official abbreviation, Sunrise. In GBN, players can upload themselves and their Gunpla online through virtual space and battle with players from across the world.
Amiibos and Smash Bros.
I mean, yeah, but I kind of wonder about the logistics of that, because every part must have its own digital signature in order to be able to scan in something that you kit bash.
I guess. I mean, we're seeing parts of that. If you give all the different parts maybe a digital signature and make it work like maybe in Starlink or something. I mean, all the different parts like match up with something in the game there, but you can still put it like on completely different chips.
But I wonder about something. We're getting too deep into this already.
I guess.
but I wonder about something like if you were to take the actual physical pieces and recolor them or customize them or change their shape. I don't know. Whatever. It's an anime. It's a video game.
It's a sci-fi tech. I guess they just have very advanced scanners.
But yeah, in the game itself, the player assumes the role of a Gunpla diver. And each year, a special tournament called the Gunpla Force Battle Tournament is held to prove who is the best diver. And the story revolves around our main plucky hero, Riku Mikami, who's a junior high student and an admirer of the famous Gunpla diver Kyoya Kujo. Riku and his friends, Yukio and Momoka, are super into Gunpla, and they play GBN together.
So this is not the same cast as in the previous 2 series?
No, it's been a different cast each time.
Okay.
But yes, Riku's life changes when he meets a mysterious diver named Sarah, as strange events take place in GPN with the appearance of mass divers, which are basically hackers, and they modify the game to their own whims, which,
So cheaters.
Yeah, you're cheating in an MMO, and we'll get to it in a sec, but yes, Riku is guided by his new allies, and they form their first ever Gunpla diver group called the Build Divers.
Okay.
They embark on adventures to see who is the best fighter in the GBN world. I just want to start off by saying that cheaters in an MMO would, I imagine, after having played several MMOs in my life, they get punished a lot quickly and a lot more thoroughly than they do in this game, which makes me wonder what the administration is actually doing.
Giving no fucks, I assume.
I mean, basically, I will say it's kind of cute that the GM is is basically Gundiver from SD Gundam Force, and there's lots of course, because it is a Gundam Build series, all of the series in this franchise have, their own nods to the original shows.
Obviously. I mean, that's part of the attraction, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like, there's a running gag in every episode. Can you spy Patrick Colasauer from Gundam 00?
Okay.
And it was something I kind of noticed at first. I was like, oh, that dude's avatar looks like Patrick. Oh, he's there again. Oh, he's there again. You're doing a thing. You're doing a thing. And it's fun. It's fun to just do the whole fan service thing in a different sort of way, as opposed to the preconceived notion of what fan service is. It doesn't always have to be, what it's become so hard and fastly associated with. GBN is a big VR MMO, which is, the thing that you do in other series as well. But it's fine because it means that, hey, unlike in the Build Fighter series, you don't have to rebuild your Gunpla from scratch after every single fight. Because that is a thing that they show in Build Fighter. Say, oh, the models get super wrecked, and I can't imagine actually doing that sort of thing if it were for real, because you have to spend so much time rebuilding it and redetailing it and making sure it's in working order before you can even go back into the fight. Whereas with this, oh hey, it's the thing you built, but it's also virtual, so you don't have to fix it every goddamn time.
Well, but isn't that taking, away from some of the drama? Like in the previous series, when it's like, oh, your model gets destroyed, it's like, holy shit, that's bad. I mean, it's not a series where they can kill people, so that's where the drama is pulled from. And isn't that missing in Divers then?
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of one of my takeaways from it, is that it's not as dramatic and it's not as cohesive as the previous series. I mean, you sort of you get into the first couple episodes, and when they meet Sarah, it's sort of like, oh, I don't want to go too deep into spoilers, but I think you can sort of figure out pretty quickly what part of her deal is, and it's sort of like, oh, we're doing this thing. All right, okay. It doesn't really I don't think it takes away from the enjoyment of the show, but I really do honestly feel like the previous two Build series were a bit more solid on that front.
Although I would expect this one to be more immersive because, it's VR and they are actually, even though it's only virtual world, they are sitting in the cockpits of the mechs. Or did they do something like that in the previous series as well?
They kind of tried to do that in the previous series where it's like you're not in the cockpit, but, you have a control set and scheme that replicates that feel.
Okay.
If that makes any sense. So yeah, obviously, the show is all mostly about its fan service and hey, all of these things that are references to past Gundam series, but it kind of does it in a ham-fisted way compared to the previous two series, because in the previous series it's like, oh, it's this modified version of this Gundam. Cool. I see what you're doing there. I'm picking up what you're putting down, as opposed to this time around, since it is in a VR world and they can do, more crazy stuff. Oh, look, it's the Sank Kingdom from Gundam Wing. Oh, we're doing this. You're just gonna run down the names. All right, cool. And it sort of got to a point where I was like, people who get it will get it, and people who don't, obviously they won't right away, but you can still figure it out and see what they're trying to do. It just sort of felt kind of like, and I don't think this is a reference we've used yet, and I'm going to pull it out right now. Back when Rogue One came out, Red Letter Media put up a video where they were like, "That's the thing! I know the thing!" And that's sort of the feeling that I get watching this show, and that's not inherently bad. And I'm not going to, say, if that's the enjoyment you get out of this, you're a bad person. No, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's sort of like, if you get it, we'll get it, but you don't need to shine such a hard and fast spotlight on it so that, have you watched Gundam Wing? Have you watched Double O?
Yeah.
Have you watched the yes
Yeah.
or no, respectively, maybe because you haven't, and that's fine.
Mm.
It doesn't take away from the enjoyment. And the thing I'm glad about is they don't do it super often, but they did it early enough that it was like, come on, guys. Other than that, the show, the one thing that I love the Build series for is seeing the variations on the mobile suits. And my God, there were so many. Because we start off with stuff like the Double O Diver and the GN3 Beam Master. Oh man, the GM, the workhorse of the Federation Army. I always got to say that. But yeah, the creativity that goes into making these variants on these things that for longtime fans that they've seen before. I still think that's really cool. And for people who haven't seen them before, it sort of gets the imagination running like, oh, what is this based on? Like one of the characters, Tiger Wolf, has an Ultron Gundam that has on one shoulder a tiger face and on the other a wolf. And it just looks really dope. And it's like, that's the kind of creativity that I look forward to seeing in these series. Just that sort of crazy off the walls sort of stuff. And, because of the fact that all of these are so different, it allows them to go equally off the walls with how the Gundams fight and, just make these crazy set pieces. And man, Gundam Build is just, it's a lot of fun no matter where you are on the Gundam fan spectrum. And if you're, a kid or a giant man-child like me. So, it's got the great animation of all the series before it, all this amazing, really fun fan service, the new mobile suits design. One thing that I was a little concerned about was the music, because Build Fighters and Try were scored by Yuki Hayashi, whose name we've brought up several times before. Mostly in reference to My Hero Academia, among other things, but I feel like that's probably his currently most well-known work. But it was worked on this time by a composer named Hide Akira Kimura. Wow, I almost butchered that name. Who hasn't done a lot in the anime space, but he kind of tried his best to invoke some of the feeling of the previous series. And, I wouldn't say it's better or worse. It's, it's sort of on the same footing. But, it's hard to deny that every show should be scored by your favorite composer or composers. So, while I miss having Hayashi on this show, it still works fine for what it is, because there's enough to get you excited for all the action that's going on.
So you already established that this is like pretty much made for, longtime Gundam fans and who want to see like a different spin on all of the stuff they know from the other series and everything, and different designs on the Gundams and all of that. So is there enough for like people who have never experienced anything Gundam? Like, is there enough character development? Is there enough, besides the battles, is there enough story-wise going on, I guess, that strings you along, besides all the references and those fantasy dream come true matchups that are probably in there? Is there like more that makes the show worth watching if you, are not even, remotely a fan of Gundam or have ever come into contact with it?
I feel like, honestly, any of the Gundam Build series are a good jumping in point. I don't feel like there's anything too exclusionary about any of them. I mean, my big gripe with this series is that I don't want to go too far. I'm not going to talk too much about the story of the second half because that's spoiler territory, but second half doesn't feel as fleshed out as the first, because the first half deals with these cheaters and hackers called mass divers and how they use these what they call break decals on their models in order to modify the game code. And it's like, oh, that's actually kind of interesting how, oh, this is how we're getting around by basically putting these special stickers on our models. Okay, that works. That's fine by me. But the series as a whole, it's fine, but I don't feel like the character motivations other than I want to be the best, or and honestly, that's kind of the motivation throughout a lot of the Gundam Build series, but it doesn't feel quite as fleshed out. Like Riku is kind of flat throughout.
And you say the second part of this series specifically is not as interesting as the first one.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes in a very predictable direction. I mean, the final showdown is spectacular. Well, actually, both the big final showdowns during the end of the two major stories we're trying to tell are pretty great, but the second one is fucking crazy. So it's at least worth watching for that. But if you want to go into it for like the story, I said a moment ago about flat. I think that's a good descriptor.
Boy, a Gundam series where the second part of the show doesn't live up to the first. That's super rare.
Are you telling me there's other Gundam series like that? Oh no.
No, why would it? I think we've
I mean, yeah, that's just like your opinion, man.
Yeah, exactly. So, how many episodes does each given series have?
Each one's been about between like 24 to 26. I think there's been a little variance between each of them. So, each series has been 2 cores, and then there's been OVAs for Build Fighters and Try. So,
but just content-wise, and since the cast is always changing, it doesn't really matter where you jump in. That's what you said, right?
Yeah. So you can, like I said, I feel like regardless of what quote unquote level you are, there's something to enjoy out of any of them. So
but it sounds like just how you enjoyed them. Like the first series is the best to start and maybe end with.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to rank them, Build Fighters is definitely first, Try is second, Divers is third. It's not a distant second or third, though, I don't think. But okay. That's my opinion. Take what you will of it.
Where's the show streaming?
You can watch it on Crunchyroll as well as on Sunrise's Gundam Info YouTube channel, which, have we talked about the Gundam Info YouTube channel? Because I've kind of mentioned it in passing, and I don't want to go too much on it, but Gundam Info is a great channel because, in addition to, the ads that they throw up for the shows and the games and the model kits, why do you run ads for model kits? It only makes you want to buy them. But they also put up the shows, both new and old, that are free to watch. Like, you can go on there and watch Wing. You can actually watch Build Fighters and Try, as well as Divers. You can watch, I think, Zeta and Double Zeta. And actually, just yesterday, as of this recording, they put up Gundam The Origin 6, so you can even watch that, too. You can watch stuff that current, yeah. So Gundam Info is a great one-stop shop for if you want to watch a whole bunch of stuff Gundam. And I mean, it doesn't require a subscription. You can just go on there and watch it for free, which is incredible.
And Gundam The Origin is a good place to start watching Gundam. Just, we never talked about that show. Is it wrapped up at this point?
I forget if 6 is the last one or if there's more. Like, I still haven't watched 6, so
I stopped watching after the first episode because I was like, nope, I'm gonna wait until this is released in its complete form, and then I'm gonna binge it because this is with these series that get like releases every quarter of the year or something. I tend to forget what happened in the previous episode before I can watch the next one. So there's not that's not working for me. So yeah.
I mean, Gundam The Origin is fascinating simply because it's a lot of Char's story through his eyes.
Yeah, it's his origin story. I mean, it's a name.
Yeah, and it's I think one of the cases that we both agree on that has good anime CG.
Oh yeah, definitely. No kidding. Probably the best anime CG or at least one of the best anime CG I've seen ever. So yeah, I can't wait to watch more of that series.
Yeah,
That reminds me. Are the mechs in the Build series, are they drawn or are they CG?
they are hand drawn,
That's nice. I mean, that's
which makes the animation a lot more impressive in comparison, to be honest.
sure. I mean, but they're, I'm actually not surprised that they're hand drawn because, most Gundam series are.
Mm.
I think pretty much all of them, if I'm not mistaken. Origin is the
For
first
the
thing that comes to mind
for
that is
the
not.
most part, yeah.
I guess Unicorn had some examples where it was not the case, and Origin obviously. But you have some Gundam series that don't look that good actually. Like Age had a lot of rough spots, if I remember correctly, for example.
Yeah, Age got a little weird, but I am still on the Age Defense Force. I I mean, I think, God, this happens every time we talk about Gundam, where we just go off on this tangent, and that's fine.
Yes. That's what happens because Gundam is a ginormous franchise. There's lots of stuff to talk about.
It's like next year, God, it's got to be either next year or the year after when the new Macross starts. I'm sure we'll go off on a tangent about all the previous other Macross series.
Definitely.
But yeah, like, I mean, some Gundam series have, made off better than others. G-Reco.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, again, going back to the core, Build Divers is, in my opinion, all right compared to the other two. But again, it's not a bad jumping in point, and I think for what it is, it's enjoyable. It will be enjoyable to all Gundam fans in some capacity.
And also, it's a pretty different tone from what you usually get with Gundam, which is this pretty serious anti-war action show with a lot of death in it. And,
Yeah.
And then, this is kind of like a very, as an opposite to that, this is a very lighthearted approach to the whole thing. That is just, having fun with the concepts and with the mechs that have been in other series and everything. So
It's so weird because it feels like it should feel like a betrayal of what Tomino wanted the franchise to stand for, and yet here we are.
Also, speaking of one of the not good series, G-Reco, which he did, I recommend everyone who wants to have a good time to listen to one of the recent episodes of the veterans at Anime World Order, who did a 2-hour something review of G-Reco in podcast form. And I listened to all of that, and it was very entertaining. And now I don't need to watch that show anymore, and I think I got a lot out of I got pretty much all I need to know out of that podcast, and it was very entertaining. So if you want to dive into one of the craziest Gundam series, I recommend you listen to that instead of watching it. If you want to do that after listening to the show, feel free to, because actually after listening to it, I was kind of intrigued. I was like, this sounds so dumb and so ridiculous and so fucking wrong-headed, and that it might just be fun to watch it. And
Dude, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I watched G-Reco beginning to end. I didn't skip any episodes. I didn't watch them out of order. And I still had no fucking idea what was going on.
Yeah, sounds like a Domino show. Yeah, anyway, this is not, Build Divers is not one of those. It's apparently very straightforward and a little fun show. So, yeah. Got any last words on the Build franchise?
I don't think so. I mean, I just, like I said, I think any point is a good one to jump into. They're all, they're all fun for varying reasons. So I don't see why you couldn't enjoy one over the other. Like, I didn't enjoy Build Divers as much as the previous two, but that doesn't mean someone else who has different tastes or is, newer to it won't. So, have at it. That's what I say.
On the outside, Soya Kuroi looks like a normal high schooler, but he keeps some very strange company. Living under one roof with a giant humanoid cat called Sensei and a spunky mate called Ginkgo, he's confronted with a pretty high amount of weirdness on every given day of his life. As if that wasn't enough, he is also suffering from amnesia and can only barely remember anything further than what happened the past year. Things are getting even crazier very soon, as giant spaceships start to appear in the sky close to his town. When the first of these alien crafts gets confronted and taken down by a group of people in giant animal-themed mechs, Soya gets pressured by Sensei and Ginkgo to join the fight, but to Soya's own initial surprise, not to take down the spaceships, but to take down the heroes and steal the flasks hanging from their necks, which give them the power to summon their battle armors. To accomplish this, the reluctant Soya gets downright eaten by Sensei, who then turns into a mech himself, turning Soya into a force to be reckoned with. However, after beating the first of the 7 warriors, grabbing the obtained flask, unlocks some of Soya's memories, and overcome by anger, he swears vengeance on the warriors who would use this cursed power. But the truth behind the group of warriors calling themselves Grand Paladin and the giant alien spaceships is much more complex than he is aware of. And the role of him and his friends in this fight is of bigger importance to the universe than he could have ever imagined. So, Planet With is a very interesting thing, not only in regards to this crazy setup, but also as a project alone. It was designed as a multimedia franchise by the mangaka Satoshi Mizukami, who also did Spirit Circle, Psycho Staff, and a story in the Trigun anthology book Multiple Bullets. Full disclosure, I've not read any of those, so make of that what you will. But he wrote and drew the manga for this, or should I say draws the manga for this, because it's still running. And he also wrote the anime and did like at least 1,074 pages of storyboards for this project.
Wow.
In fact, he had begun work on this series 4 years before the manga and anime launched, so to call this a passion project seems to be a bit of an understatement in this case.
Okay.
The manga started serialization in April this year, and like I said, is still running, and the anime started in July, so those two things ran concurrently. And since the manga is still going, I wonder how many differences there are between the two versions. Usually, if the anime ends before the manga, this means there is an original ending. But since this whole project stems from a single mind, I wonder if Mizukami had like a clear ending for the story in mind, and the manga will have the same ending eventually as the anime. I really want to go check out the manga once that wraps up, because I think like this whole concept is super interesting and kind of rare. Usually we get like a manga and then the anime is based on it, or we get an original anime. But like, you know, these things kind of starting at the same time, running concurrently, and then, you know, the anime finishes up first. That I cannot even think of another example where this is happening. But yeah, let's talk more about the actual anime, because even if Mizukami did a lot of legwork on this, he could not have animated this thing alone, I think. So he had help from director Yohei Suzuki and the folks from JC Staff. JC Staff have been on our show a lot already. Food Wars, Flying Witch, Vatican Miracle Examiner, to name only a few. And Yohei Suzuki probably came up before as well, because he directed the Danmachi spin-off Sword Oratoria that you reviewed and were kind of lukewarm on, if I'm not mistaken and misremembering.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
All right. He also directed Magister Negimagi, the sequel, UQ Holder, I don't know how it's pronounced.
Oh, yeah.
And a bunch of stuff I've never heard of. But the fact that this is a JC Staff show might already tell you everything about the animation quality that you need to know, as in their shows are usually very solid in regards to animation quality, with some moments of excellent, but overall not on a necessarily like super high level. Good, but not, you know, great. And this counts for Planet With as well. Like, very solid base with some dynamic fight scenes and some moments of really good action choreography, but nothing that will like completely blow your mind in terms of Sakuga level, like something you would expect from My Hero Academia or Attack on Titan or One Punch Man, which, funny mentioning that here because the first season of One Punch Man was done by Madhouse and the second season will be done by JC Staff. So we'll see how that turns out in comparison to the first season.
Yeah, I mean, JC Staff, bless them for all the work that they do, but they do kind of operate on a really weird sliding scale of quality.
Yes, I've never seen a show from them that blew me away visually. Food Wars came close. There are a lot of great moments in that show, but that is more related to how weird the visual metaphors get for the food tasting and everything and the battles. And that is not necessarily because the animation in those scenes is really stellar. It's the way it's handled is very creative and well put together and staged and edited and everything. It's just that the actual animation quality and animation cycles are not that super impressive, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, one of their currently running shows is Index 3, and oh boy.
All right. Wait, did they do the other Index series too?
They did the other Index series. They did both of the Railgun series. I think they did the Index movie as well, which I still have not watched. But
all right, yeah. So okay, it's like I said, not bad at all. But I have seen better. That's, like I said, counts for the series as well. Also, all of the mechs are CG, mostly in the cut frame style, which is not great. I've seen worse, again, definitely. It's solid anime CG, but I've also seen a lot better. So, yeah, animation-wise, there is, room for improvement, or was room for improvement, I guess, because the series is finished. I think the ending is pretty conclusive. But yeah, if Food Wars has shown us anything, to just name another JC Staff example, then that you don't need incredible animation if the characters and stories are well written. And, this show can pull you in another, on a different level, in another way. And I'm glad to report that Planet With delivers in both those departments, and then some. Just as a heads up, I need to spoil things a bit here, but since most of the basic setup gets explained by episode 3, I think I can at least give that away without doing too much damage. And otherwise, I can't really explain what is so interesting about this show. So I'm sorry, I have to take at least a bit of the surprises away. And it is a surprise because, in the beginning, like, let's say the first 2 episodes, it's hard to get a grasp on what this show is and where it's going, because there are a lot of things happening, a lot of characters are introduced at the same time, a bunch of weird shit happening, like, everything is really a lot. that's what I would say about this show in general. Like, Planet With is a lot of many things. And yeah, I would, just starting somewhere, I think what pulled me in eventually, aside from the story that was developing over time, was like this crazy, unique look and feel this show has. And that encompasses everything from the designs and the way the characters behave and are written to the actual plot developments. A lot of the show just caught me by surprise with where it was going, because that's not necessarily what I've seen in other anime of that ilk. I mean, a lot of things are definitely things as you would expect, but a lot of things are, coming out of nowhere, kind of surprising. Not in a bad way. Like, it's like, no, that doesn't make any sense or something. It's just like, oh, okay, I didn't expect this to go that way, because that setup usually gets paid off in a very different way, and those character archetypes behave in a different way. And yeah, I really enjoyed that. I really liked that the show was able to surprise me until the very end. Let's stick with the style a bit longer. To give you an example of how weird the show is, let's start with the alien spaceship, or ships, or weapons. I think they're called weapons at some point. They look weird as fuck. The first time you lay eyes on them, you're like, oh, what is this? what is going on? Like, for example, the very first one is like this giant teddy bear, kinda, with a bunch of human hands coming out of it at the bottom, and some human ears on the side, a human nose on the back, and the word peace written on its chest. And I don't mean peace as in, like, peace for all of humanity, but peas, the food.
What?
So it's like, what? So, yeah. And later there's a thing with a small crocodile body and a ginormous pyramid as its head. Like which is this really life-size pyramid, and then the small crocodile body, like, dangling underneath it. The designs in the show are crazy. And they're really fun to look at. Like, it's like every time, the alarm goes off, or, there's a new spaceship coming. And I'm like, oh my god, what is that gonna look like? What the hell? What the crazy thing is that gonna turn out to be? And yeah, I love those, like, funky, weird designs. And the designs on the mechs are crazy as well. Like, Sensei, like I said, when he consumes soya, he turns, like, into this weird, comparatively small mech. Like, he's smaller than the giant. Wait, let me. Here's an anime name for you for a mech.
Here we go.
The mechs of the the organization where those 7 heroes are from that defend the town against the spaceships initially. The mechs are called the Psychokinetic Mega God Photon Armor. There you go.
Excuse me?
Yes. I repeat, the Psychokinetic Mega God Photon Armor. Yeah, good stuff. So those things look interesting as well. They're I think, if I'm not mistaken, they're like zodiac themed. Like, all of them look like something from the Chinese zodiac. Not all of them, because that would be 12 and not 7. But you find a bunny in there. You find a tiger, and they have the specific characteristics. Like the bunny mech is very fast and fights in a specific agile way, and the tiger mechs are super strong and everything. So yeah, those designs are very cool and very, very unique. And Sensei in his mech form is like pretty, like, only half the size of those, I think. And has, like, this weird, funky giant eyes, makes it look like a cat mech, kinda. But a very interesting color pattern, and has, like, this pseudo hero scarf around his neck and everything. So it's a very unique and cool design. And I liked it a lot. I was like, oh, that's cool. And that also, again, that gets an upgrade later. Not to take away too much, but also looks very interesting. So yeah, lots of cool design work in the series, just in general, from the weird spaceships to, the mech of the heroes and the villains and everything. And later we get an antagonist that's also quite unique and different and everything. So yeah, cool stuff, just in terms of what to look at. Even if the animation itself is not something that's super stellar, this just is a cool show to look at. And then, still staying with, like, the weird tone this show has, that is not only reflected in design, but also in the general plot development and the characters. It's like, we start off with Soya, and you think, he normal high schooler, blah blah blah, and has this kind of friend. They haven't really met. I think she's the class representative, whatever that's called in Japanese, incho or something. It's a very common term. And, she wants to get close to Soya because she's introverted and something. And she's like, okay, I have not really talked to that boy, and he's new and everything. So, yeah. And they talk, and he doesn't really have anything to share because he doesn't remember what happened a year before this has happened. Tells a story about how his parents died in an accident and that he lost his memories in, but as we later learn, when he regains his memories, that is not really, not even coming close to the whole truth. Their development starts as a pretty on-the-side thing, and I didn't expect that to go anywhere, which, like, okay, we need a female character that kind of anchors him in the real world, I guess, and that we need in this show to make this feel more grounded. But, you know, Nozomi becomes more and more important later on in the show, which I really appreciated. And her developing relationship with Soya is probably one of the best romance plots I've seen in anime in a while, because it's like this no nonsense, straightforward romance thing, like the plot development. It's no contrived drama bullshit. Like, there's one little thing in there where, you know, you get this typical, oh, maybe he's interested in this other girl. I'm not quite sure what to make of this, but that gets resolved super quickly. And aside from that, their relationship just is this straightforward, very cute, very nice development that actually goes somewhere, which, you know, is not a thing that must necessarily happen in kind of, you know, shonen-driven anime, though I think this is more of a seinen thing, actually, with all its themes and everything. But yeah, I was really happy about that. She becomes a very integral part in the show, and I really appreciate that. And yeah, cool stuff. In general, like on the character front, there is a lot of cool stuff happening. But before we dive deeper into the characters, let's return to the weird tone of the show. What also really worked for me was the humor in this show. Like, there's some really well-placed, random, off-kilter jokes that caught me by surprise. Like, the show is not really that, like, you know, comedy heavy. Like, it's not deploying a gag firework in every episode or something. But when it does, like, this visual joke or non sequitur gag, it always hit home for me because it fit, like, the weird tone. It totally fit into this universe, and it was like didn't feel like a joke for joke's sake. It feels like, oh, okay, this kind of makes sense for this character to do this right now, but it's also super funny, or it makes sense for that to happen now to this character. Again, still super funny. So yeah, it didn't feel, you know, these small bursts of comedic effect. And otherwise, this is not very, like I said, not a very comedy-driven show. It's got a lot of serious parts. But, you know, then you get these small gags in between, and all of those work. And that was really surprising for me. It's like every one of those hit home. And, yeah, it was a home run, I'd say. So, yeah, good stuff. For example, there is a joke making fun of your general anime tropes, where one of the cast members is put into, like, this genjutsu wish fulfillment anime fantasy by the alien spacecraft, because that's what they do. I'll get to that later. And is surrounded by more and more ladies in his fantasy, you know, because he's like this super mega hyper chunibyo. Like, he's like constantly spinning around himself and doing weird poses. So you get, of course, he's like super into manga and anime and everything. Like, he's living that thing. So of course his fantasy is like, his wish fulfillment fantasy is like being in an anime. So all these women keep pop up like he's in a fucking harem thing. And then suddenly his parents pop up out of nowhere and are like, son, we never told you, but you actually have a big-breasted stepsister. And that made me almost fall off the fucking couch. Because it was so fucking fitting. And it's like, they like rattle off these dumb, stupid ass plot contrivances from harem anime. And that was like, there was like the cherry on top, where like his parents are like, by the way, and that's amazing. That's, yeah, stuff like this, like things, yeah, you know, you don't expect it, and suddenly they throw out this amazing, well-crafted, well-written joke that just works. And yeah, I love that. I think the show really delivered on that front as well. So, as I promised, now let's get into the characters. Soya starts out, you know, he's our main character. He starts out as this typical, I guess, vengeance-driven shonen character type. Not really a Sasuke from Naruto, because he's too loud and brash for that. But, you know, he's a good kid. He's, you know, he's friendly to you know, his friends pretty much, and most of the time to Sensei and Kinko as well. Even though he's annoyed that he's only getting vegetarian food. Like, that's one of the running gags in the show, where he's like constantly on the search for meat and not getting it. Not at all. Like only it's through weird circumstances, every time he thinks he's got some meat in his hands to eat, and some nice steak or something, it turns out to be vegan or something. So it's, yeah, that's, you know, and you question, oh my god, will he ever be able to eat actual meat? And that, weirdly enough, that gag also gets kind of paid off in a character-driven way, considering who, you know, is responsible for most of the food he gets. So that was also a cool thing. It's like, no, this is not just a gag. It also works, you know, in regards to what one of the characters turns out to be, and what one of the themes of the show is. And I was like, yeah, great, you didn't have to do that show, and you did. So yeah, he starts off as this kind of general standard shonen hero thing, and then, you know, slowly develops into something else, kinda. Like, at some point of the show, some things happen, and he soon questions, like, his reasons to fight, and even refuses to continue the battle at a certain point. And that was really cool to me, because it made sense to that character, and it was also pretty unique to that kind of archetype in terms of how these stories usually go, because, you know, those archetypes are, you know, very straightforward, very, you know, driven, and get to a certain point, maybe their head get turned around, but then, you know, they still find a reason to fight immediately, or they switch their reasons to fight. And don't get me wrong, Soya also later finds a reason to fight, but there is a moment in the show, where he's like, no, I'm done with this. I had my reasons, and I accomplished my goal, and I'm done here. This is it. And there is nothing in this for me. I don't want to protect Earth for, you know, several reasons, because I don't feel for some reason, I don't feel the need to do this. And I don't want to be part of this fight anymore. I don't want to be part of this violence. I don't want to, you know, endanger myself and everything. And that's totally understandable at this point, and relatable. And it doesn't make him look like a coward or anything. It's just like, no, I get where he's coming from. That's like an understandable reaction. He's like, he had one reason to be in this fight, in this conflict, and that is resolved. Or, you know, would think at this point it is resolved. And he's like, okay, this is over. We're done here. And, you know, that was cool. It was like, okay, give him a logical reason to pick up the sword again, to fight again. You know, because some other shows like to gloss over that and just like keep their heroes on fighting. And it doesn't necessarily, you know, mean that they have the best reason to do that. But he, you know, gets to this point, and then he has to find a new reason to fight, and that reason has to make sense. And it takes some time for him to get there. And I really like that. I really like the way they developed his character, and it made all of this feel much more organic than maybe in some other show-driven shows like this. So yeah, I really appreciated the character work in that regard. And I think at this point, I need to, you know, spoil a few things, like I mentioned. I've tried to stay away from that as far as I, you know, could up to this point, and tell you what works about the show without giving too much away. But now I need to get into this. So when we first encounter the alien spaceships, you know, there's like fighter squadron going towards it, engaging with it, and later the one of the members of Grand Paladin. And, you know, they kind of get hit with a force field from the spaceship. And then you get kind of a glimpse into, let's say, a fantasy created from their mind. And it turns out that is the whole thing these spaceships are about. They are not here to, what would happen in many other shows, to, like, destroy the whole town, kill all the people or everything. They're here to show people who come into contact with them these gentle dreams that fulfill their ambitions and rids them of their worries. So it puts them in kind of their happy place. Like, whatever they wished from their life to happen, or, all the regrets that they have in life, they make those go away. Like, one of the characters gets confronted with the death of his mom in a fire, which is the reason why he became a fireman. And it's the illusion is showing him basically a scene where he saved his mom, and then, she's telling him to forgive himself for what happened because he couldn't save her originally. And it's like the illusion is like pushing him towards this moment of peace and rest. And and another character is, she was always afraid being weak. That's why she put all her, her development, her and drive in her life to get stronger. And her illusion is basically telling you, no, it's okay to lose. It's okay to be weak. You are fine this way. You are okay. And that's the thing. Those are the things that happen. Is what these illusions do. They're trying to get the characters into a state where they are content with their current lives, and so that they don't have any reason to, progress any further, to strive for, I don't know, higher goals, to strive for greatness, to become better, to become a better version of than the self, than the person they are right now. And that actually happens to at least one of the characters, or one of the main side characters, where he's trapped in this illusion, and he suddenly loses all that made him unique and special before, and gave him like this, granted, this kind of weird person, but made him also, you got the feeling that he had some goal in his life. He was living his life a very special way, and had a specific thing in mind where he wanted to go. And he was also a very good person, just weird. And all of that goes away once he's, he is trapped in that illusion and wakes up from it. He's like a completely changed person. He is, he says like, okay, no, I'm going back to my parents. I'm trying to find a steady job and everything. And I'm, living a normal, quiet life. And that's it. He lost basically all will to progress any further with his own evolution. In the mind of the people who come into contact with them, those dreams fill gaps in the heart of that specific person, but it steals the heart's hunger and kills the real life drive of that person. It's like once these people come into contact with the spaceship and don't find a way to escape that illusion, they feel like, okay, I'm fine now. I'm at peace. I don't need to do anything. I'm done with with going anywhere in my life, with evolving, with becoming, with changing as a person, with growing as a person, with progressing in my life. These illusions kill the drive for evolution. So it doesn't kill people, but it basically stops them from growing mentally as a person. And that's a very interesting approach. And you're wondering, hey, what is this about? Why is the spaceship doing that? And why is it not destroying everyone? And this call comes down to, and we get clued into that at, I would say, episode 3 of this, because we get a big heap of background information. These spaceships are from one faction of the same organization that Sensei and Ginko are from. And that organization is called Nebula, which is this giant force of alien races who are, who banded together to fight a specific evil in the universe. And, there are these two factions. On the one side, there's the Sealing faction. Those are the ones who basically sent the spaceships to Earth and try to, basically kill all drive of the people, all wish for evolution. And then there are the pacifists, which is basically the faction that Sensei belongs to. And he and Ginko are kind of the only member of that, apparently. Or at least it feels like it, because it feels like the Sealing faction is like the dominant force, like the force that basically won the argument here and is like, okay, Nebula is doing this. And it feels like Sensei is kind of rebelling against that. And the Sealing faction says, okay, we see the humans evolving are evolving in a certain way, and they've gained this kind of power, the evolution of power. And we see this heading in a very dangerous way if they continue like that. They will end up like a lot of other races in the universe did. And if they continue this path of power, they will summon basically a force that will destroy everything. And until then, they will probably conquer other planets and, subjugate other races. And they will just go a very dangerous path and eventually risk destroying the whole universe by, summoning this giant power, just by trying to evoke this evolution of power and basically going down that path, because humans, as we all know, are a very violence-driven species. They do a lot of wars and can be very dangerous. And that's what the Sealing Faction is trying to avoid. And that's why they're sending these spaceships, so to stop basically the human evolution story and say, no, this ends here. The human race will not advance any further. This is it. Because if they do, this will end very dangerously. So if you watch Gurren Lagann, they're kind of like the anti-spirals, but more sympathetic. It's like, okay, once we get all the background story, why they're doing this, why this is happening, it's like, okay, I can see why this is an approach they decided on, because this is a very serious threat. This might go some very bad places, so I can understand why you would choose to do this. It's Sensei is the one who says, no, I see a potential in the human race. I hope that the humans, instead of choosing the evolution of power, instead choose the evolution of love. And that would mean that, they decide to evolve in a different way and are more about character interaction and relationship and try to evolve in a peaceful way and, form bonds and friendships and everything. And, make peace, not war, is basically the answer to this. Like, those are the two different paths here. The Sealing Faction is trying to avoid the humans going down a route of war, to avoid that, taking some very definite measures and cutting all evolution short. And the Pacifist Faction is saying, okay, we believe that the humans can go a different way and reach greater heights. We should only watch them. And if, we believe that they have the potential to make the right choices here. And that's very interesting. So you have this clash of these two ideologies. And, these are basically personified by Sensei on the one side and Generalissimo on the other side, which is this giant dog, naturally. This is also one of the fantastic things. Sensei also has a spaceship and Generalissimo as well, and those are just bigger versions of themselves. Like, it's a giant cat spaceship and a giant dog spaceship that looks exactly like those two characters and that they climb into. It's silly, but it's amazing. It looks really great. So the whole thing about the Sealing Faction, like trying to end the evolution of the human race, is also like an interesting subversion of the standard shonen trope of, overcoming your limits by sheer willpower. Increasing your power level is one of the most important and overused plot points in shonen stuff like Dragon Ball or even My Hero Academia or something like that. And here, it is characterized as a bad thing if it's just a mindless search for greater power. Evolution is not a bad thing, but the reasons and methods are important. Like, ignoring them will get you swallowed up by your overwhelming power and you go berserk. And that happens in the show to at least one of the characters, where it's like, okay, everything that matters to me is becoming strong enough to win this fight, which is a pretty Goku approach to the whole thing. And that goes horribly wrong. And that is exactly what the Sealing Faction is trying to avoid and what it is worried about. And Sensei is trying to guide, the humans to a path where that doesn't happen, where it's like, okay, keep on evolving, but not for the sole reason of gaining power, of gaining great might. That whole theme of trying to evolve the right way, which is a very contemporary problem, I guess, in human society as well, is, a thing that runs through the whole show. And it's done very well, in my opinion. It's really cool. And, it helps that the two factions, like, nobody is a bad guy in this show. This is really one of the things. Like, Generalissimo on the one side, like I said, very understanding, or understandable and relatable. It's like, okay, he saw what if a race goes, in a very wrong direction, what that could do to the universe. He has like experience in that, and he doesn't want that to happen again. So it's like, okay, I get it. And Sensei on the other side, who kind of is a real hero of this show. It's not really Soya. Well, maybe at the end. But Sensei is the guy who is like taking a stand for humanity. Who's like, no, leave them alone. They can do this. Believe in them. They are able to do this. I want to believe in them myself. And he's doing everything in his power to make this possible. Like, he is the rebellious force, and he's like the nice, calm-headed guy who puts himself into danger, literally, because every time the mech gets damaged, he gets damaged. Like, you see after a fight with Soya, where his arm in mech form got ripped off or something, he's wearing a bandage in his cat form the next day. Like, he's harmed from this. Like, he's the one taking the brunt of the damage. Soya's only steering. And he is the guy who's kicking all of that into motion. He's the guy, he's the proactive person. He's the guy pulling Soya out of, well, not really, it's Nozomi kind of as well. But, he's the guy who steers Soya toward being a better person, a good person, and finding the things that are worth fighting for. And yeah, he's just a cool character. And it helps that those two, Generalissimo and Sensei are a giant cat and a giant dog. And the only thing Sensei says is, nya. There's this weird thing where he's always trying to look up the skirts of model kits without being caught. That's one of those off-kilter jokes that are just random and funny. But, in episode 3, I think there's like this kind of dream sequence, but you get to grasp that is actually a conversation that happened, where we hear the first time Sensei and Generalissimo talking to each other in normal language and not just animal noises. So we get an actual spoken dialogue between a giant cartoon cat voiced by Riki Yakoyama, good old Klaus von Reinhardt from Blood Blockade Battlefront, Ando in Shio School Road, Tora in Ushio and Tora, and Narumi in Karakuri Circus, to name only a few examples from his incredible Vita. So we get him as a giant weird-ass cat alien, and he's talking to a giant cartoon dog voiced by none other than Norio Wakamoto.
Oh my god.
It is the most magical thing you can imagine. Also, Wakamoto, with his usually over-exaggerated gravitas, saying things throughout the show like, "Bow" or "One" is my life fuel. Like, every time Generalissimo is on screen, I'm so happy.
I can hear it in my head just being like, "One."
Yes, exactly. This is what it is like every time, and it's amazing. And it's like, man, when these two are on screen together, it's fantastic. And those two have a great relationship with a palpable history that is oozing like mutual respect and friendship and rivalry. And all of that gets, a damn satisfying payoff in one episode or in several episodes. Where we also later learn their real names in the show. Most of the time they just go by Sensei and Generalissimo, but of course they have names, they're from an alien race. And once that thing comes up and once that get paid off, it's super satisfying. It's like fantastic. Like, I don't know if you remember the final fight from Scryed of all things to bring up.
Oh man, it's been a minute.
There's like this fight at the very end of the show where, if none of our listeners have seen Scryed, like, it's basically these guys summoning either special armor and with powers, or kind of stands from JoJo. Those evolve. You get like 3 forms of that for each character, where the armors get more and more elaborate. And that is the thing that happens in this show as well, and that's kind of related to the payoff between those two characters. And that's, first of all, one of the most amazing fights in this show. And it's just so satisfying from a character perspective because, like, you know, finally these two philosophies of these two characters who are two of the most important characters in this show just clashing with each other in a incredibly well-staged way. And it's just the hypest shit. It's the hypest shit, even if the animation isn't even not that super fantastic. I mean, it's good, especially in that fight. But goddamn, it's just how well those two characters have been built up to that point, and especially their relationship and that coming to a head here. It's just, it's really good. Just in general, like, this show is crazy when it comes to, like, it almost has too many finales. Like, people say that about Lord of the Rings, but that's true for this show as well. Only it's pulled off better in this show. Like, there's 4 finales. Like, each more satisfying than the previous one. There's one final battle in episode 6, one what could go as a final battle in episode 9, and then one in episode 10, and one in episode 12 at the very end of the show. And that's crazy. Like, each of these fights could have been like the finale to a season. And it's like, okay, I don't know, guys. You could have, I don't know, maybe spread that out a bit more, but I'm glad you didn't, because this is keeping up the pacing, you know, and it's super enjoyable, so thanks for that. And yeah, it's, the fights in the show are great too. And, you know, they always mean something and always feel very satisfying. Yeah, I loved it. Like, in general, I mean, I mentioned the payoff between, you know, Generalissimo and Sensor being incredibly good, but each of the characters, like, kind of gets at least one interesting development or one interesting payoff. You would expect some of the people from Grand Paladin are like, okay, these are one-off characters, and, you know, once they are robbed of their powers, they won't appear anymore in the show. But most of them are a constant in this show. And are even, you know, if they're not fighting anymore, they stay important in a way. And I also like that a lot. And they also have each their, you know, all their little relationships that make them very relatable and, you know, grounded, and makes you like, oh, okay, I like these characters. Like I mentioned before, there is not really a per se bad guy in this show, which was also really interesting. Like, every antagonist has kind of a motivation that you can relate to. Generalissimo already mentioned, but there's also the leader of Grand Paladin. And, you know, he's kind of, it's pretty clear he's gonna be an antagonist too. But again, also, his motivation is very understandable. He has like this typical, okay, I'm gonna use this power that I have here, and I'm gonna be like this indomitable force that you cannot beat. And with that, I'm gonna stop everyone from fighting each other. I'm like gonna stop all wars. That's my life goal. That's what I want to do. And, you know, that's a very, like, respectable goal, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The problems are, you know, the methods he's using. And, you know, that's also one of the things the show is saying, if it wasn't already obvious enough with one of the factions being the pacifist faction. The ends don't always justify the means. And, you know, that's what that character is about. And that's why he's an antagonist and has to be stopped at a certain point. But still, you can relate to that guy. You can understand where he's coming from. He's like, and you're like, okay, I can see why he would do this. And, you know, in a different show, maybe he would be the hero. And again, the final boss, the final antagonist of this show, who is kind of in the background, but has a very important role, just in terms of what's happened before this show takes place, is like this giant destructive force, but with a very understandable origin and, again, motivation and point where he's coming from and what he's trying to do. Like, it was so amazing to me that from a lot of characters I saw them and I was like, oh, I know what this character is about. And then the show's like, no, you don't. No, he's not really a bad guy. You know, he's just seeing things differently. And people just want the same thing here. Some of them are just going about it the wrong way. And it's the task of our heroes to make them realize that. And that's great. I can't emphasize this enough. Like, there's so much in this show, in this simple little show, that has a lot of big things to say, and important things to say, and doesn't do it really in a ham-fisted way, in my opinion. It's like it all feels really organic, and it all fits with the theme of the show. And yeah, I never felt like put off or like, oh no, this is getting preachy, or this is too weird, or this doesn't fit together. No, it's just like this all really fit really well, and every new plot point, as quick as it might, suddenly be revealed, works. And it's like the logical next step. So I think the plotting, the writing, the pacing in the show is really good. I could have maybe used some, more episodes for the show to give us a bit more time with some of the characters, just because they're so much fun and we, like to spend more time with them instead of rushing from plot development to plot development. But it's still a very satisfying and well-paced watch. Like, this is only 12 episodes, and you're getting so much out of this 12 episodes, so much stuff happening, so much character development, so much plot development, and it doesn't feel super rushed, in my opinion. It would have been nice to have more breathing room in there, definitely. Always, develop some of the other characters a bit more. There are enough of them in there. But it's not that necessary. Like, the show is bringing across what it wants to, and it doesn't feel like it's really hurrying up all the time. It's good stuff. And yeah, I just from a story perspective, story point of things, I really, really, really like this show. I think it's incredibly well written. It's incredibly entertaining. Got a bunch of great characters. Ginkgo, the maid, you would think she is like the cute, maybe fan service. Not really, though. There's not really fan service in the show. A bit, maybe. A few small bits here and there, but it's not that dominant. But, you would think, okay, she's the maid of this, and she's here to be the moe thing and cute thing. No, she also has a very important part in this show. And it's like, yeah, damn it. Like, everyone in this show has an important part and turns out differently than I expected them to. And their relationships are meaningful, and where they end up and everything is meaningful. And it's cool. Man, I'm really happy that what the show ended up to be, because when I watched the first episode, I didn't know what to make of it at all. It was like, what the fuck is going on? What is this? I don't have any idea where they are going with this. This is also weird. This is also quirky. What is this character constellation? What is happening? And then, let's say, second or third episode was on my screen. I was pulled in completely. I love this show. And, we haven't even talked about all of the production highlights. This show also has incredibly banging sound design, which we don't mention a lot, as a part of a good show. But I want to highlight it here because it popped out at me. Like, the sound director is Yoshikazu Iwanami, who also worked on JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Also Berserk, Fate Apocrypha, and Captain Tsubasa. And if you can remember those powerful, crunchy sound effects from those shows that make your subwoofer go wild, those are in Planet With as well. It's like this great, like this oomph effect that emphasizes the power of the clashes and elevates the impact of the fight scenes. And I think that can be contributed to that guy because it's like this very familiar kind of impact sounds and effect sounds that work really well in an action show and give it like this extra bang that I really like. I think the sound design in this show is smashing. And speaking of sound, the soundtrack of the show is fucking amazing because it's done by Kohei Tanaka, who did the soundtrack, probably most well known for the soundtrack to One Piece, which has one of the all-time great anime soundtracks when it comes to, classic orchestral compositions. Like so many great themes in that show, both in terms of action beats, but also very dramatic and, dark and sad and somber tones. Like he does so many good things in that show in terms of music. But also he did the soundtrack for Gravity Rush or Gravity Days, depending on what region you're from, which is a PS Vita? Yes, PS Vita / PS4 title. And that's also a fantastic soundtrack. If you're on the search for good anime or game soundtracks, can't go wrong with that. And he did the soundtrack for Planet With, and it's amazing. Like the first track on the soundtrack alone, that always comes up in one of the best, battle scenes, naturally, is such a kick-ass track that gets you immediately super hyped and drags you into the moment, like pulls you in, never lets go. And it's like you sit there, fists clenched, and it's like, yes, go guys, this is fantastic. And yeah, another thing that just works in this show just really well. I think I've rambled long enough because I have said everything there's to say about the show without giving any more away. And I want to, keep some surprises for those of you who actually want to watch this. If you are on the search for a great sci-fi anime, maybe a bit in the vein of Gurren Lagann, maybe a bit in the vein of, I don't know, even Macross to some extent, or I don't know what other shows I can. It's not really Ava. It's not. It's got a kind of serious theme, but it's not. It doesn't have that much of a serious mood. It's too weird and quirky and fun for that, I guess. But it's more serious than Gurren Lagann is kind of most of the time. So yeah, I don't know. It's weird. This is a kind of a unique thing in my opinion. It's very special in more ways than one. I hope I was able to bring that across in this ramshackle review. But all I can say is I liked the themes of the show. I liked the characters of the show. I liked the story of the show, where everything was going. And the finale, even though I would have liked kind of an epilogue thing, maybe, at the very end there, which we don't really get, it still ends on an incredibly satisfying note. It's like, okay, this is perfect, kind of, Sure, we could have done more episodes. Maybe I don't think there will be anything more because the story is over at this point. There doesn't need to be any more story. But this is fine the way it is. This is a good place to end it on. And sure, I would like to see what happens to these characters after that. But the story is over. That's fine. I'm very happy with this. These were amazingly well-plotted, well-paced 12 episodes. I was never bored. I was super entertained. And a lot of this stuff was very unique and surprising. So yeah, if you're in the mood for a great sci-fi action anime that does some interesting, different things, and you are not, put off by some very weird character designs and very quirky and out there characters, I cannot recommend the show enough. It's definitely one of my favorites this season. We'll see how it ends up in our finale in the next episode. But yeah, it's definitely it was a fantastic watch, and I didn't see it coming. This was not on my radar at all, and I loved it. So yeah. And the show is streaming on Crunchyroll, so you can just head over there and watch it right now. Planet With, definitely watch that. And I guess that's it for Anime Brain Freeze in 2018. I think all that's left for me and John is to wish you happy holidays and a good start in 2019. We're done with Anime Brain Freeze for this year, but not for this season, because there's, one more episode coming with our finale. And best of the season and everything. And then after that, we'll pretty quickly have the winter shows to talk about, or the winter premieres to talk about, and then our first reviews of fall season.
Yeah, we're going to have to jump right back in on that a lot quicker than usual, I think.
Yes, I think so. But yeah, we'll be back next year. I hope you have a good time during the holidays and a good start in 2019. And I want to send you off with a quote from an actual episode from Planet With, which is, I think, a very nice, whatever holiday spirit message. Fits that all very well. So I'm going to use it here, even though it's, of course, super cheesy. But yeah, justice forgives no one. And without forgiveness, love is impossible. And without love, having a soul is impossible. And that is a wrap on the 64th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jack Kaufman. Please go to vrt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for our review index and some interesting articles linked in our episode release posts. Follow us on Twitter at AnyBrainFreeze. We tweet regular updates and fun anime-related stuff there. Leave us comments and questions on Facebook and our YouTube channel, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next show. Macht's gut.
Happy New Year, everybody. Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
We meet some old friends.
And once again, find ourselves among thieves.